The morning shift at the Galactic Academy Research Station began like any other for Krevan. The young Xanthari researcher arrived at his workstation with his usual cup of heated mineral solution, settling into his chair as the station's artificial lights mimicked the dawn of his home planet. His forearms moved with practiced efficiency across the display panels, preparing to review the latest data compilations from across the galaxy. Krevan had worked at the Academy for 3 cycles now, analyzing information about the hundreds of species that made up the galactic community. His species, the Xanthari, were known throughout the stars for their logical minds and attention to detail. Their insectoid bodies might appear delicate to some, but their intellectual contributions had earned them respect in every corner of civilized space. Today's task seemed routine enough. The Academy had just published its updated Apex Species Rankings, a comprehensive study conducted every 10 cycles to assess which species showed the greatest potential for survival, advancement, and contribution to galactic civilization. Krevan pulled up the document on his main screen, expecting to see the usual names at the top of the list. The Kryn would surely hold the first position again. Those massive warriors stood 3 times taller than most species and possessed strength that could bend metal beams with their bare hands. Their military prowess and honor-bound culture had dominated the rankings for the past 50 cycles. Below them would likely be the Elder Minds, those ancient beings of pure energy who had mastered technologies that other species could barely comprehend. Krevan's eye stalks extended as he focused on the screen. Then he froze completely, all 4 of his hands stopping mid-motion above the controls. At the top of the list, in clear letters, sat a single word: human. He blinked his compound eyes several times, certain there must be some display error. Humans? Those soft-skinned bipeds who had only joined the galactic community 15 cycles ago? The species that looked like they might break if you touched them too hard? Krevan had met a few humans during his time at the Academy. They seemed pleasant enough, certainly friendly and curious, but apex species? That seemed impossible. The Kryn were listed second. The Elder Minds were third. The Xanthari themselves held the 7th position. And somehow, humans had surpassed them all. Krevan scrolled through the document rapidly, searching for an explanation, an error note, anything that would make sense of this ranking. The report contained thousands of data points, analysis from hundreds of researchers, and evaluations spanning multiple years. Everything appeared legitimate. The Academy's seal of approval marked every page. This cannot be correct, Krevan muttered to himself in his native clicking language. He stood from his workstation and made his way through the curved corridors of the research wing. Other scientists from various species nodded greetings as he passed, but Krevan barely noticed them. His mind raced with questions. Had the humans somehow manipulated the data? No, that seemed unlikely. The Academy's security was too strong. Had there been a calculation error? Perhaps. But the Academy employed the best minds from dozens of worlds to prevent such mistakes. Director Voss's office sat at the end of the main research corridor. The director was also Xanthari, a respected elder who had led the Academy's research division for 20 cycles. If anyone could explain this confusion, it would be him. Kevin pressed the entry chime and waited. A moment later, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Krevan, Director Voss greeted him, his aged eye stalks turning toward the younger researcher. I wondered when someone would come to see me about the rankings. Director, I must speak with you about the publication this morning, Krevan said, entering the spacious office. There appears to be a significant error in the data. Director Voss gestured to a chair designed for Xanthari anatomy. Please, sit, and tell me, what error do you believe you have found? Krevan settled into the chair, his posture displaying his agitation. The humans, Director. They are ranked as the apex species above all others. Surely, this cannot be accurate. They are so new to our community, so physically weak compared to the Kryn or the Draviks. How could they possibly be ranked first? The old director's mandibles clicked softly, a sound that among their people indicated thoughtful amusement. I assure you, young Krevan, there is no error. The ranking is entirely correct. But Director, with respect, how is that possible? I have reviewed the criteria for apex status. physical capability, technological advancement, cultural stability, survival potential. Humans excel in none of these categories when compared to species like the Kryn. Director Voss rose from his own seat and moved to the large window that overlooked the station's central garden. Various species walked the paths below, including several humans who laughed and conversed with aliens of different shapes and sizes. "You are looking at the wrong measurements," the director said quietly. "The Academy does not rank apex status by who is strongest or who has the most advanced weapons. We rank by potential, by adaptability, by the capacity to not just survive, but to help ensure the survival and advancement of all species in the galaxy." Kreven's eye stalks tilted in confusion. "I do not understand." "That is because you have never truly studied humans," Director Voss replied. "You have seen them in passing, perhaps exchanged pleasantries, but you have not examined what makes them unique, what makes them dangerous, what makes them capable." The word dangerous struck Kreven as odd. Humans did not seem dangerous at all. They seemed rather gentle compared to most species he knew. "Director, I would like permission to conduct my own investigation," Kreven said suddenly. "I wish to study the humans directly and understand why the Academy has made this ranking." Director Voss turned from the window, his mandibles spreading in what might be considered a smile. "I was hoping you would ask that. In fact, I have already arranged for you to work with our human liaison officer. She has agreed to help you in your research." "She?" Craven asked. "Dr. Helen Carter. She is one of the senior human representatives at the Academy. Brilliant scientist, experienced diplomat, and I believe she will be very helpful in your investigation." Director Voss moved to his desk and activated a communication panel. "Dr. Carter, please come to my office. I have someone who would like to meet you." Within minutes, the office door opened again. Kreven turned to see a human woman enter the room. She was of average height for her species, with brown skin and dark hair pulled back from her face. Her eyes were bright and curious, and she wore the standard Academy uniform with several badges that indicated her various qualifications. "Director Voss," she said with a slight bow. "You asked for me?" "Dr. Carter, this is Kreven, one of our research scientists. He has questions about the recent apex species rankings and would like to conduct a study to better understand the results. I thought you might assist him." Helen Carter turned to Kreven, and a warm smile crossed her face. She extended one hand in the human gesture of greeting. "It would be my pleasure. I have to admit, I am curious about what you will discover." Kreven extended one of his own hands and gently touched her palm, mimicking the gesture as best he could. Her skin was warm and soft, nothing like the hard exoskeleton of his own people. "I appreciate your assistance, Dr. Carter," he said carefully. "Though I must be honest, I am quite skeptical about these rankings." Helen's smile widened. "Good. Skepticism is the foundation of good science. When would you like to begin?" "As soon as possible. Then let's start tomorrow morning. I will arrange for you to visit our habitat section and meet with some of our medical researchers. If you want to understand why humans are ranked as apex, you should probably start by understanding how we are built." As Kreven left the director's office with Dr. Carter, his mind swirled with questions. Tomorrow, he would begin to find answers. Tomorrow, he would discover whether this ranking was a mistake or if humans truly possessed something that made them special. He had no idea that what he would learn would change his understanding of the entire galaxy forever. The human habitat section of the Galactic Academy Research Station looked surprisingly plain to Kreven. He had expected something grand or imposing, perhaps displays of weapons or monuments to great battles. Instead, he found comfortable living quarters decorated with images of natural landscapes from Earth. Plants grew in small containers along the corridors, and soft music drifted from somewhere nearby. It all seemed very peaceful and rather ordinary. Dr. Helen Carter walked beside him, her stride confident as she led him through the winding passages. She had dressed in casual clothing today, rather than her formal uniform, which made her seem even less threatening than before. Kreven found himself wondering again how creatures so seemingly delicate could be ranked above the mighty Kryn. "We are meeting with Dr. Marcus Webb first," Helen explained as they walked. "He is our chief medical officer and also a biologist. He can explain human physiology better than anyone else on the station." They entered a medical research facility where various scanning devices and examination equipment lined the walls. A tall human male with gray hair and kind eyes looked up from a data tablet as they entered. He smiled warmly and set the device aside. "Helen, good to see you," Dr. Webb said. Then he turned to Kreven and gave a small bow. "And you must be our curious researcher. Welcome. I understand you have questions about human biology?" "Many questions," Kreven admitted. "I have reviewed your species' basic physical data, and I find myself confused. Your bones break easily compared to most species. Your skin offers almost no natural protection. You have no claws, no natural armor, no venom. How can such a fragile species be considered apex?" Dr. Webb's smile did not fade at what might have been considered an insult. Instead, he seemed amused. "Fragile? I suppose we might appear that way at first glance. But appearances can be very deceiving. Tell me, Kreven, what do you know about endurance hunting?" Kreven's eye stalks tilted in thought. "I am not familiar with the term. On Earth, before humans developed advanced tools, they hunted animals by chasing them." Webb explained, "Not by being faster, but by being more persistent. Humans would track an animal for hours, sometimes days, never letting it rest. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion while the human was still running." "That seems inefficient," Kreven observed. "Perhaps," Helen interjected, "but it worked. Most predators on Earth could sprint faster than humans, but they could not maintain that speed. Humans evolved to run steadily for incredible distances. Even now, our long-distance runners can cover over 100 kilometers without stopping." Dr. Webb nodded and pulled up a holographic display showing the human circulatory system. "Our bodies are built for endurance. We have an efficient cooling system through sweat that allows us to regulate temperature during extended physical activity. Most species overheat and must stop. Humans just keep going." Kreven studied the display with growing interest. The human body's internal systems were more complex than he had realized. "What about healing? Surely your soft skin is a disadvantage when injured." "Actually, human healing capabilities are quite remarkable," Webb replied. He pulled up another image showing cellular regeneration. "We can recover from injuries that would permanently disable other species. Broken bones mend themselves. Damaged organs can regenerate to some degree. Our immune systems are incredibly adaptive, learning to fight new diseases constantly." "I have heard that humans feel pain more intensely than many species," Kreven said. "Is this not a weakness?" Webb's expression grew more serious. "Pain is a warning system, yes, but humans have developed an unusual relationship with pain. We can push through it when necessary. We can function with injuries that would force other species into shock." As if on cue, the door to the medical facility opened, and a human male in a security uniform entered. He was muscular and moved with the grace of a trained fighter. Helen gestured to him. "This is Lieutenant Jake Murphy. He has agreed to demonstrate some human physical capabilities for you." Jake grinned and gave Kreven a casual salute. "Happy to help. What would you like to see?" "Perhaps you could show our guest your training routine," Webb suggested. For the next 20 minutes, Kreven watched in growing amazement as Jake performed various physical exercises. The human lifted weights that seemed impossibly heavy for his size. He ran on a machine at steady speeds that would exhaust most species within minutes, yet he continued for a full 15 minutes without apparent distress. He demonstrated climbing, jumping, and moving his body in ways that displayed remarkable flexibility and strength. What struck Kreven most was not any single feat of power, but the versatility. Jake could do many different types of physical activities with equal competence. He was not the strongest being Kreven had ever seen, but he could do more different things than any other species the researcher knew. "We adapt," Jake said when he finished, barely breathing hard despite the intense workout. "Put a human in the desert, and we learn to survive there. Put us in the frozen north, and we figure that out too. Drop us in the ocean, and we learn to swim and dive. We are not built for one environment. We are built to handle whatever comes." Dr. Webb pulled up a galactic map showing human colony worlds. In just 15 cycles since joining the galactic community, humans have established settlements on 47 different planets. Worlds with high gravity, low gravity, thin atmospheres, different day-night cycles. Species that evolved on those worlds struggle when they visit other environments, but humans adjust within days or weeks. Kreven processed this information carefully. So humans succeed through adaptability rather than specialization. Exactly, Helen confirmed. We are not the best at any one thing, but we are competent at almost everything. And what our bodies cannot do naturally, we build tools to accomplish. There is something else, Webb added quietly. Something that the Academy rankings consider very important. Humans have an unusual tolerance for discomfort and hardship. We can endure situations that would break the spirit of other species. I do not understand, Kreven said. Webb glanced at Helen before continuing. Let me give you an example. 3 cycles ago, a human exploration ship crashed on an ice planet. The crew of 12 was stranded for 30 days before rescue arrived. They had limited food, no proper shelter, and freezing temperatures. All 12 survived. They built shelters from the wreckage, rationed their supplies, and kept each other alive through determination and cooperation. The Kryn are stronger than us, Jake added. The Elder Minds are smarter. The Draviks have better technology. But I would bet on humans to survive in more situations than any of them. Kreven was beginning to see a pattern, though he still felt he was missing something important. Physical adaptability was certainly valuable, but was it enough to justify Apex ranking? You still have doubts, Helen observed, reading his body language with surprising accuracy. I admit I am impressed by what you have shown me, Kreven replied honestly. Human physical capabilities are more sophisticated than I realized, but physical traits alone do not explain an Apex ranking. The Kryn are still more powerful in direct conflict. The Elder Minds still possess greater knowledge. You are absolutely right, Webb agreed. Physical capability is only one piece of the puzzle. If you truly want to understand why humans are ranked as Apex, you need to examine something else entirely. What is that? Kreven asked. Helen smiled. The human mind. Our psychology, the way we think and feel and process the world around us. That is where you will find the real answer. Can you help me study this? Kreven asked. I know someone who can, Helen replied. Professor Lisa Grant is our chief psychologist. She has been studying the differences between human and alien cognition for years. I will arrange a meeting for tomorrow, if you wish. Kreven nodded slowly, his eye stalks swiveling as he absorbed everything he had learned. Yes, I would like that very much. As he left the medical facility with Helen, Kreven felt both enlightened and more confused than before. Humans were clearly more capable than he had assumed, but capability alone did not make a species apex. There had to be something more, something deeper that explained their ranking. Tomorrow, he would continue his search for answers. Tomorrow, he would begin to understand the human mind. And perhaps then, the truth would finally become clear. Professor Lisa Grant's office was filled with items that Kreven found curious. Paintings hung on the walls, showing scenes that seemed to have no practical purpose, just colors and shapes arranged in pleasing patterns. Small sculptures sat on shelves alongside books with worn covers. A musical instrument leaned in one corner, and photographs of smiling humans decorated her desk. The entire space felt personal and warm in a way that Zenthari workspaces never did. The professor herself was a woman with silver hair and gentle eyes that seemed to notice everything. She gestured for Kreven to sit in a chair that had clearly been adjusted to accommodate his different body structure. Helen had already briefed her on the purpose of his visit, so she began speaking before he could even ask his first question. You want to know what makes the human mind special? Lisa said with a knowing smile. That is a bigger question than you might realize. Dr. Webb showed me that human bodies are more adaptable than I understood, Kreven replied. But the Galactic Academy does not rank species on physical traits alone. There must be something about human thinking that sets you apart. Lisa nodded and activated a display screen on her desk. Images of brain scans from various species appeared, including humans. Every intelligent species in the galaxy has evolved different ways of processing information. The Zenthari, like yourself, excel at logical analysis and pattern recognition. The Elder Minds can hold thousands of thoughts simultaneously. The Kryn have incredible focus and discipline. Each species has its strengths. And humans? Kreven asked. Humans are strange, Lisa said with a soft laugh. Our brains are not the largest or the fastest, but they do something unusual. They balance logic with emotion, analysis with intuition, order with creativity. Most species lean heavily toward one type of thinking. Humans somehow manage to use multiple types at once. She pulled up a complex diagram showing neural pathways. The human brain can switch between different modes of thought very quickly. We can be purely logical when needed, then shift to creative problem solving, then to emotional processing, all within minutes. This flexibility allows us to approach problems from many different angles. Kreven studied the diagram carefully. Flexibility again. Just like your physical bodies, your minds are built to adapt. Exactly, Lisa confirmed. But there is more to it than that. Humans have developed something that makes us psychologically resilient in ways that surprise other species. We have the ability to find hope even in terrible situations. We can endure psychological trauma and still function. We can lose everything and somehow rebuild. That seems like an emotional response rather than a cognitive advantage, Kreven observed. Emotions are cognitive advantages for humans, Lisa replied. Other species often see emotions as weaknesses that interfere with logical thinking. For humans, emotions are tools. Fear keeps us alert. Anger gives us energy to fight injustice. Sadness helps us process loss. Joy bonds us together. We have learned to use our emotions rather than be controlled by them. Helen, who had been sitting quietly nearby, spoke up. Lisa, perhaps you should introduce Kreven to Daniel. His story might help explain what you mean. Lisa's expression softened. Yes, that is a good idea. Daniel is in the engineering section today. Let me contact him. Within minutes, they were walking through another section of the station. Helen explained that Daniel Brooks was a human engineer who had been working on the station for 2 cycles. 6 months ago, he had been involved in a serious accident during a repair mission. The details were not pleasant, but the outcome was clear. Daniel had lost his right arm below the elbow. They found him in a workshop, using a prosthetic arm to calibrate a delicate piece of equipment. The artificial limb moved with smooth precision as Daniel adjusted tiny components. He looked up as they entered and smiled warmly. Professor Grant, Helen, good to see you, he said cheerfully. Then he noticed Kreven and extended his left hand in greeting. And you must be the researcher I heard about. Daniel Brooks, nice to meet you. Kreven carefully touched the offered hand, still adjusting to human greeting customs. I am Kreven. Professor Grant suggested I speak with you about human psychology. Daniel glanced at his prosthetic arm and chuckled. I guess I am a pretty good example of human stubbornness. Have a seat. I can work and talk at the same time. As Daniel returned to his calibration work, Kreven observed him carefully. The human moved with confidence and ease despite his injury. There was no sign of distress or sadness in his demeanor. He seemed genuinely content. If I may ask, Kreven began carefully, how did you lose your arm? Plasma conduit explosion, Daniel replied without hesitation. I was doing a repair on the outer hull when the containment failed. My partner got clear, but I was too close. The blast took my arm and gave me some pretty serious burns. I was lucky, really. Could have been much worse. Lucky? Kreven's eye stalks drew back in surprise. You lost a limb and you consider yourself lucky? I survived, Daniel said simply. My partner survived. Nobody else got hurt. Yeah, I lost my arm, but I am still here. Still working. Still living my life? That makes me lucky in my book. Professor Grant stepped forward. Daniel, can you tell Kreven how you felt in the days after the accident? Daniel paused in his work and considered the question. Honestly, I was angry at first. Really angry. Then sad. I went through a phase where I felt sorry for myself and wondered if I could still do my job. But then I realized something. I could either let this define me as a victim, or I could adapt and move forward. So, I chose to move forward. Just like that? Kreven asked. You simply decided to be happy again? Not happy exactly, Daniel corrected. I had to grieve what I lost. That is important too. But I did not let that grief become my whole life. Humans are good at that. We acknowledge pain, we feel it, and then we find a way to keep living anyway. Lisa pulled up a chair and sat down. This is what I mean about psychological resilience, Kreven. Humans can experience terrible trauma and still maintain hope for the future. We have studied other species who suffered similar injuries, and many never fully recovered psychologically. They became defined by their loss. Daniel represents something very human, the ability to suffer and still choose to thrive. But how? Kreven insisted. What mechanism in the human mind allows this? Daniel and Lisa exchanged glances. Daniel spoke first. I think it is because we are really good at finding meaning, even when bad things happen. We look for the lesson, the growth, the purpose. My accident taught me that life is fragile and precious. It made me appreciate every day more. It showed me how much people care about me because of how they supported me during recovery. I found meaning in my suffering, so it did not destroy me. Lisa nodded in agreement. Humans have this unique ability to reframe experiences. We can take something negative and find positive aspects within it. We call it making the best of a bad situation. Other species see this as illogical or even delusional, but for humans, it is a survival mechanism. Kreven processed this information slowly. The Zenthari experienced emotions too, but they were more straightforward. Sadness was simply sadness. Loss was simply loss. The idea of transforming negative emotions into something productive seemed almost impossible to him. There is another aspect to consider, Helen added. Humans have incredible determination. Once we decide to do something, we can push through almost any obstacle. We set goals and pursue them even when the path is difficult. Stubborn, Daniel said with a grin. That is the word a lot of aliens use. Humans are stubborn. We do not give up easily. Is this why humans are ranked as apex? Kreven asked. Because you refuse to surrender? Partly, Lisa replied. But it goes deeper than that. The Academy rankings consider which species have the greatest capacity to ensure survival and progress for all species in the galaxy. Humans bring something unique to that mission. We bring hope. We bring the belief that problems can be solved, that tomorrow can be better than today, that working together makes us all stronger. Daniel returned to his work, his prosthetic fingers moving with practiced skill. I will tell you something else about humans. We are really good at connecting with others, even when they are different from us. I work with 5 different species in this department. Each one thinks differently, communicates differently, has different needs, but I figured out how to work with all of them because humans are good at building bridges. Kreven watched the human engineer work for a long moment. Daniel had suffered a serious injury that would have ended many careers, yet here he was, still working, still smiling, still contributing. His prosthetic arm was not perfect, but he had adapted to it. He had found a way to continue. I am beginning to understand, Kreven said quietly. Human minds are flexible, like your bodies. You can adapt your thinking, your emotions, your perspective. You can endure suffering and still move forward. You can find hope in darkness. Now you are getting it, Lisa said with an encouraging smile. But you still have not seen the most important part. What is that? Kreven asked. Helen stood and moved toward the door. Come with me tomorrow. There is something you need to witness. Something that will show you the true heart of humanity and why we are ranked as apex species. Kreven agreed, though he could not imagine what could be more revealing than what he had already learned. As he left the engineering section, his mind raced with new understanding. Humans were more complex than he had ever imagined. Their strength came not from any single advantage, but from a combination of adaptability, resilience, and determination. But Helen's words suggested there was still more to discover. One more piece of the puzzle that would make everything clear. Tomorrow, he would find out what that final piece was. Kreven arrived at his workstation early the next morning, his mind still processing everything he had learned over the past few days. Human adaptability was impressive, certainly. Their psychological resilience was remarkable. But he still struggled to understand how these traits translated into an apex ranking that placed them above species with far more obvious advantages. Helen had asked him to meet her in the central observation deck at midday. She had been mysterious about what she wanted to show him, saying only that he needed to see humans in action during a real situation. Crevan spent the morning reviewing his notes, trying to organize his thoughts into something resembling a coherent analysis. When the appointed time arrived, he made his way to the observation deck. The space overlooked the station's main commercial sector, where beings from dozens of species conducted business, socialized, and went about their daily routines. Helen stood by the large viewing window, but she was not alone. A human male in a dark blue uniform stood beside her, his posture alert and professional. Crevan, this is Captain Eric Stone, Helen introduced them. He coordinates emergency response for the entire station. Captain Stone extended his hand and Crevan touched it briefly. The captain had gray eyes that seemed to assess everything around him constantly. Helen tells me you are researching human capabilities. I hope you brought a strong stomach because we might have an interesting day ahead. Before Crevan could ask what he meant, an alarm began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and a computerized voice spoke calmly but urgently. Emergency alert, hull breach in Section 7. Life support failure imminent. All personnel evacuate Sections 6 through 9 immediately. Crevan's eye stalks retracted in alarm. Section 7 housed residential quarters for multiple species. Hundreds of beings lived in that area. A hull breach meant they were all in immediate danger. Captain Stone was already moving, speaking rapidly into a communication device. This is Captain Stone. I need emergency teams to Section 7 immediately. Medical standing by. Get me a damage report and confirm how many people we have trapped. Helen placed a gentle hand on Crevan's shoulder. Stay with me. You are safe here. Watch what happens next. Through the viewing window, Crevan could see chaos erupting in the commercial sector below. Aliens of various species ran in different directions, some toward the emergency shelters, others seemingly unsure where to go. Fear was visible in every movement, every gesture. Then he noticed something strange. While other species scattered in panic, the humans in the crowd were moving with purpose. They were not running away. They were organizing. A human woman in civilian clothes began directing a group of confused Dravix children toward the nearest shelter. A human male helped an elderly Xanthari who had fallen in the rush, supporting the aliens' weight as they moved to safety. Another human was coordinating with station security, pointing and gesturing as they established evacuation routes. Captain Stone's voice crackled over the station-wide communications system. Attention all personnel, this is Captain Stone. We have a hull breach in Section 7. Emergency teams are responding. If you are in Sections 6 through 9, proceed calmly to the nearest emergency shelter. If you are in other sections, please stay where you are and allow emergency personnel to do their work. His voice was calm and steady, showing no trace of panic despite the serious situation. Crevno noticed that the calm tone seemed to affect those listening. The chaos below began to organize itself into orderly movement. How many trapped in Section 7? Captain Stone asked into his device. A voice responded. 32 confirmed, sir. Mixed species. We have Xanthari, Dravix, 3 Kryn, and several others. The pressure doors sealed automatically, but life support is failing. They have maybe 20 minutes of air. Captain Stone's expression tightened, but his voice remained steady. Understood. Dispatch rescue teams Alpha and Beta. I am going in personally. Sir, the breach is still active, the voice protested. The entire section could decompress. That is why we need to move fast, Stone replied. He turned to Helen. I need you here coordinating communication with the families. Let them know we are doing everything possible. Helen nodded, her face serious but composed. Be careful, Eric. Stone was already moving toward the emergency exit. To Crevan's surprise, Helen gestured for him to follow. Come on, you wanted to see what makes humans special. Now you will see it. They rushed through the corridors, following the captain towards Section 7. Other emergency responders joined them, a mix of species including humans, Xanthari, and others. But Crevan noticed that the humans moved with particular urgency, not just for themselves, but constantly checking on their alien colleagues. They reached the sealed pressure doors that separated the damaged section from the rest of the station. Through a small viewing port, Crevan could see the trapped individuals inside. They were huddled together, their fear obvious even from a distance. The life support indicators on the wall panel flashed red, counting down the remaining oxygen. Captain Stone assessed the situation quickly. We cannot open these doors until we seal the breach, or we will lose pressure in this entire section. Engineering? How long until you can patch it? 10 minutes minimum, Captain, a voice replied over the communication system. They do not have 10 minutes, Stone said grimly. He turned to a human technician who had just arrived. Kevin, can we get emergency oxygen through the maintenance conduits? The technician, a young man with red hair, studied the wall panel. Maybe. The conduits are small. Someone would have to crawl through and manually connect the oxygen lines from inside. Show me, Stone ordered. Kevin led them to a small access hatch. The opening was barely large enough for a human to squeeze through, and the maintenance conduit beyond looked dark and cramped. Worse, the conduit ran through the damaged section, meaning whoever went through would be exposed to the same failing life support. I will go, Kevin said immediately. I am smaller than most of the team and I know the oxygen systems. Captain Stone placed a hand on the younger man's shoulder. Kevin, you understand that if something goes wrong in there, we might not be able to get you out before the air runs out. I understand, sir, Kevin replied without hesitation. But there are 32 people in there, including a Xanthari child. We cannot let them suffocate because we were too scared to try. Kevin watched in amazement as Kevin gathered his equipment. The young human was clearly frightened. His hands shook slightly as he checked his portable oxygen supply. But despite his fear, he was still going. He was still choosing to risk his life for beings he had probably never even met. Kevin found himself speaking. Why are you doing this? You do not know those people. They are not even your species. Kevin looked at him with surprise, as if the question itself was strange. Does that matter? They need help and I can provide it. That is enough reason. Before Kevin could respond, Kevin climbed into the maintenance conduit and disappeared into the darkness. Captain Stone coordinated the rescue operation from outside, his voice steady as he communicated with multiple teams simultaneously. Helen stood nearby, monitoring the life support readings and providing updates. Time seemed to slow down. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for Kevin to reach the trapped group and connect the emergency oxygen. The countdown on the life support panel continued its relentless descent. 15 minutes remaining. Then 12, then 10. Kevin noticed other humans arriving to help. They brought medical equipment, thermal blankets, food, and water for when the trapped individuals were freed. They coordinated with alien colleagues seamlessly, adapting their communication style to each species. A human doctor was explaining procedures to a Xanthari nurse, while another human was helping a massive Kryn security officer position emergency barriers. He is through, Captain Stone announced suddenly. Kevin made it. He is connecting the oxygen lines now. Everyone held their breath. Then a cheer erupted as the life support panel showed oxygen flowing into the sealed section. The countdown stopped with 6 minutes to spare. Through the viewing port, Kevin could see the trapped individuals reacting with visible relief. Good work, Kevin, Captain Stone said into his communicator. Now get yourself back here safely. Actually, sir, Kevin's voice came back, slightly strained from breathing the thin air. I am going to stay here until we can open the doors. There is a young Xanthari child who is pretty scared. I think having someone with her might help. Kevin felt something strange happen inside his thorax. The young human was giving his own oxygen supply to extend the air in the sealed section, staying in danger to comfort a frightened alien child. It made no logical sense. He had completed his mission. He could return to safety, yet he chose to stay. Your call, Kevin, Captain Stone replied, and Kevin heard genuine pride in the captain's voice. We will have you out of there soon. The engineering team worked with incredible speed. Within 8 minutes, they had patched the hull breach enough to safely open the pressure doors. The trapped individuals poured out into the corridor, gasping and relieved. Medical teams immediately began checking each one, ensuring nobody had suffered serious harm from the oxygen deprivation. Kevin emerged last, supporting a small Xanthari child who clung to his uniform. The child's parent rushed forward with clicking cries of gratitude. Kevin gently transferred the child to her parent's arms, then collapsed against the wall, exhausted. Captain Stone helped the young technician to his feet. You did good work today, Kevin. Really good work. Kevin managed a tired smile. Just doing my job, sir. As medical personnel checked Kevin and the other survivors, Kevin stood quietly, observing everything. He watched humans comforting frightened aliens. He saw them sharing their water with beings from other worlds. He noticed how they worked together with species who looked nothing like them, communicating through translators and gestures, but always with patience and kindness. Helen approached him, her expression knowing. Now do you see it? Kevin turned his eye stalks toward her. See what? What makes humans apex, she said softly. It is not our strength, or our intelligence, or our adaptability, though those things help. It is this, our willingness to risk everything for others. Our ability to see past differences and recognize that all intelligent life has value. Our instinct to help rather than abandon, to include rather than exclude, to lift up rather than dominate. Kevin looked back at Kevin, who was now laughing weakly as a Dravix doctor scolded him for taking unnecessary risks. The young human had nearly died today, and yet he seemed almost embarrassed by the attention he was receiving. He saved lives today, Kevin said quietly. Lives of people he did not even know. That is what humans do, Helen replied. We save each other, all of us, every species, because we believe that is what intelligent beings should do. For the first time since beginning his investigation, Kevin thought he was beginning to truly understand. Kevin sat in his quarters late that evening, surrounded by data displays and notes from his investigation. The emergency in Section 7 had ended hours ago, with everyone safe and recovering, but the images from that crisis kept replaying in his mind. He had witnessed something that no amount of data analysis could have prepared him for. He had seen humans risk their lives without hesitation for beings they barely knew. His research report was due to Director Voss in 2 days. He needed to compile everything he had learned into a coherent explanation of why humans deserved their apex species ranking. But how could he explain something that defied pure logic? How could he make other Xanthari understand what he had felt watching Kevin Martinez choose to stay in that failing compartment to comfort a frightened child? A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. Helen Carter stood in the corridor, carrying 2 containers of warm liquid. I brought tea, she said with a gentle smile. Figured you might need some company while you process everything. Kevin gestured for her to enter. She settled into a chair and handed him one of the containers. The liquid inside was a mild herbal blend that even non-humans could safely consume. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Helen spoke. You have been very quiet since the emergency, she observed. What are you thinking? Kevin's eye stalks moved in patterns that indicated deep contemplation. I am thinking that I came here expecting to find an error in the Academy's rankings. I thought perhaps humans had somehow manipulated the data, or that the researchers had made a mistake. But there was no error, was there? No, Helen said softly. No error. I have spent days measuring human capabilities, Kevin continued. Physical endurance, psychological resilience, adaptability, all impressive, but not unique. Other species have these qualities too. The Kryn are strong and disciplined. The Elder Minds are wise and patient. My own people are logical and precise. Every species has its advantages. That is true, Helen agreed. So, what makes humans different? Kevin set down his tea and activated one of his data displays. Images from the past few days appeared in the air between them. Daniel Brooks working with his prosthetic arm. Captain Stone coordinating the rescue. Kevin Martinez emerging from the maintenance conduit with a child in his arms. Humans are different because you refuse to be content with your own survival, Kevin said slowly. You do not just want to survive. You want everyone to survive. You do not just want to advance. You want everyone to advance. You see other species not as competitors or threats, but as part of your community. Helen's eyes brightened with emotion. Go on. The Academy does not rank species by who is strongest or smartest, Kevin continued, his understanding finally crystallizing into words. It ranks species by their capacity to ensure galactic survival and progress. And humans have the greatest capacity for that, because you actively work to make other species stronger, safer, better. He pulled up another image showing human aid workers helping to establish infrastructure on developing worlds. In just 15 cycles since joining the galactic community, humans have provided technology to 37 species. You have shared medical knowledge freely. You have helped settle disputes between warring groups. You have built schools on planets that are not even your own. We believe that when everyone succeeds, we all succeed, Helen said. A rising tide lifts all boats, as we say on Earth. The Kryn would never do this, Kreven said. They are honorable warriors, but they focus on their own strength and glory. The Elder Minds share knowledge, but only with those they deem worthy. My own people prefer to observe and analyze rather than directly intervene. But humans, you involve yourselves. You help. You care. Helen nodded slowly. It is not always appreciated. Some species find us intrusive or overly emotional. They say we should focus on our own problems first. Perhaps, Kreven acknowledged. But today, I watched a young human risk his life for a Xanthari child he had never met. That is not logic. That is not strategy. That is something else entirely.
Compassion, Helen said simply.
Empathy. The ability to see suffering and feel compelled to help, regardless of who is suffering. Kreven's eye stalks focused intently on her. Is this common among humans? Or was Kevin Martinez exceptional? Helen laughed softly. Kevin is a good person, but he is not exceptional by human standards. Ask any human if they would help a child in danger, and almost all would say yes. The species of that child would not matter to most of us. A child is a child. This is why you are Apex, Kreven said with sudden certainty. Not because you dominate others, but because you elevate them. You make the entire galaxy stronger through your compassion and cooperation. A chime sounded, indicating an incoming message. Kreven opened it to find a summons from Director Voss requesting a meeting the following morning. The time had come to present his findings. The next day, Kreven entered Director Voss's office to find not just the director waiting, but also a human woman he had not met before. She was older than Helen, with silver hair and a bearing that suggested authority and experience. She wore a formal diplomatic uniform with insignia indicating high rank. Kreven! Director Voss greeted him. This is Ambassador Claire Rodriguez. She is the senior human diplomatic representative to the Galactic Academy. I thought she should be present for your report. Ambassador Rodriguez extended her hand, and Kreven touched it carefully. I have heard good things about your research, she said warmly. Director Voss tells me you have been very thorough. They all settled into their seats, and Kreven activated his presentation. He had worked late into the night organizing his findings, and now he presented them with the clarity that came from true understanding. I began this investigation believing the apex species ranking was an error, he started. I could not understand how humans, who are relatively new to our community and lack obvious physical or technological superiority, could be ranked above species like the Kryn or the Elder Minds. Images from his research appeared on the display. I examined human physical capabilities and found them remarkably adaptable. I studied human psychology and discovered exceptional resilience. I observed humans in crisis situations and witnessed extraordinary courage. But none of these things alone explained the ranking. Director Voss leaned forward with interest. And what did explain it? The criteria for Apex ranking, Kreven said, pulling up the official Academy standards. The Academy measures capacity to ensure galactic survival and progress. Not individual survival, not species survival. Galactic survival. The survival and advancement of all intelligent life. He displayed data showing human contributions to other species. In 15 cycles, humans have shared more technology, provided more aid, and facilitated more cooperation between different species than any other civilization has done in a century. You do this not for strategic advantage, but because you genuinely believe in helping others. Ambassador Rodriguez smiled, but said nothing, allowing Kreven to continue. Humans possess something unique in the galaxy, he went on. You have the ability to form bonds across species barriers. You can work with anyone, relate to anyone, care about anyone. Your empathy extends beyond your own kind to encompass all intelligent beings. He showed the footage from the emergency in Section 7. Yesterday, a human technician named Kevin Martinez risked his life to save 32 individuals, most of whom were not human. He did this without hesitation, without expecting reward, simply because it was the right thing to do. This is not an isolated incident. This is how humans think. Director Voss's mandibles moved in approval. You have discovered the truth then? Yes, Kreven confirmed. Apex does not mean most powerful. It means most capable of leading all species toward a better future. And humans lead, not through domination, but through inspiration. You make others want to be better. You show us that cooperation is stronger than competition. You prove that compassion is not weakness, but strength. Ambassador Rodriguez finally spoke. That is very kind of you to say, but we are not perfect. Humans make mistakes. We have our own problems and conflicts. Of course, Kreven agreed. But you also have something that allows you to overcome those problems. You have hope. You believe tomorrow can be better than today, and you work to make it so. This hope is contagious. When humans arrived in our galaxy, they brought optimism and possibility. They showed us new ways of solving old problems. He pulled up his final analysis. The Academy ranking is entirely correct. Humans are apex, not because they are better than other species, but because they make all species better. You lift everyone higher. You create unity where there was division. You find solutions where others saw only obstacles. Director Voss stood and approached Kreven. This is an excellent report. Will you publish it? With your permission? Yes, Kreven replied. I believe other species need to understand what makes humans special, not to fear them, but to learn from them. There's one more thing, Ambassador Rodriguez said. I understand you originally took on this research because you doubted the ranking. Now that you understand it, what will you do? Kreven had been thinking about this question since the previous evening. I would like to request a long-term research position, studying human-alien cooperation. I want to document how humans interact with different species and what we can all learn from those interactions. I believe this knowledge could benefit the entire galaxy. Director Voss's mandibles spread in what might be considered a smile. I was hoping you would say that. The position is yours if you want it. I do, Kreven said without hesitation. 2 weeks later, Kreven stood in a lecture hall facing a diverse audience of students from multiple species. He had been invited to present his findings to the next generation of researchers and diplomats. Helen sat in the front row, offering encouragement with her presence. Today, I want to talk to you about what it means to be an apex species, he began. Many of you, like me, probably assumed it meant being the strongest or the smartest, but the Galactic Academy measures something more important. It measures the capacity to ensure that all species survive and thrive together. He displayed images from his research. Humans have shown us that true strength comes not from dominating others, but from uplifting them. True intelligence includes emotional wisdom, not just logical analysis. True advancement means bringing everyone forward, not racing ahead alone. A young Kryn student raised a massive hand, but our people value strength and honor above all else. Are you saying we are wrong? Not wrong, Kreven replied carefully. Different. The Kryn have much to teach about discipline and courage, but humans have something to teach as well. Compassion, cooperation, the belief that we are all stronger together than we could ever be apart. He continued his lecture, sharing stories from his investigation. He told them about Daniel Brooks finding meaning in loss. He described Kevin Martinez risking everything for strangers. He explained how humans formed bonds that transcended species boundaries. As the lecture ended and students filed out, Helen approached him. That was wonderful, she said. You really understand us now. I am still learning. Kreven replied honestly. But I understand the most important thing. Humans are apex, not because you are perfect, but because you genuinely care about making the galaxy a better place for everyone. That is a gift, and it is why you deserve to be ranked first. Helen smiled and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Thank you for taking the time to see beyond the surface. Not everyone does. Krevan looked out at the Academy campus through the lecture hall windows. Beings from hundreds of species walked the paths together, learning and growing. Humans moved among them, always ready to help, always willing to teach, always building bridges between different worlds. The ranking had been right all along. Humans were apex because they understood something fundamental about intelligent life. Success was not measured by individual achievement, but by collective progress. True leadership meant serving others. And the strongest species was not the one that could defeat all challengers, but the one that could unite all beings in common cause. Krevan had come seeking to debunk a ranking. Instead, he had found a truth that would shape the rest of his career and perhaps the future of the entire galaxy. Humans were not just apex, they were hope.